Okay, good morning. Today we're going to discuss and see the last material for our scientific communication class, which talks about how to create a curriculum vitae or CV, and then cover letter, and also how to write an abstract. So as you can see in your screen at the moment, I'm showing you the list of your class, your past sessions and future sessions that we going to have. And what interesting here is basically the last session of our class that was scheduled for Friday, December the 10th, 2021. And it's supposed that this one is the final date for the I think the physics study program has scheduled this day for our finals, okay, for our final exam if we want to use it. And as usual, in my class, I use this date for submission of assignments, especially for poster presentation submission, that you are required to send me the PDF file of the poster and also the video file of your presentation. So here, the date is Friday, December the 10th. So it's basically a day after elementary physics exam, okay, here in Friday. So we have more or less 3 more weeks to follow up. And so the date, if it's not going, well, I'm supposing that there will be no change in terms of the exam date or the final date. So but the final announcement of every final exam should be given by the physics study program a week or so before the start of the finals week. And if I'm not mistaken, the finals week should be on, well, the finals week started at December the 6th, if I'm not mistaken, and it will last for 2 weeks. And our class, our scientific communication class, have Friday, December the 10th as its final day. So please be aware with the dates that we require to fulfill in this semester. And our remaining classes should be on next Thursday, that we're going to use it as a workshop. So make sure that you already have your draft for your 15 minutes presentation ready to be examined in next Thursday. And then the following week, we're going to start our final presentation, the 15-minute presentation, whereas 6 students will present their topic on each session. So we are only going to have 6 presenters for 4 days or 4 sessions, if I'm not mistaken, because our class only consists of 24 students, and it is suitable and it is quite ideal for us to have a presentation session which only consists of 6 presenters, because it's typical. It's for 2-hour slots, because we're going to have probably some breaks between them, just like in a normal settings, or just like in the normal situation where we going to a seminar or an annual meeting, where they usually have breaks during each sessions or in between of one parallel session to another. And so so please use your time effectively so that your poster presentation and also your paper, okay, you need to submit also the paper in Thursday on December the 2nd, okay, the final day of the presentation. So your poster will be submitted by Friday the 10th, and your final paper should be submitted on Thursday, December the 2nd. Okay, so those are the important dates that we need to follow so that every assignment for this class will be reviewed for grading. Okay, so as long as you are submitting your assignment, there should be no problem in getting a high in the highest remark or the highest grades for this class, because the one that I'm examined, that I looking out from you, is not actually the final product. Well, final product in terms of the visuals, etc., is part of the evaluation, but the most important thing is that you are progressing from one assignment to another and showing development or improvement from one session, from one occasion to another. That's the most important thing of the scientific communications class. Okay, so I've shown you the schedule for our next lectures, and based on the activities, list of activities that we're going to have today, we're going to examine, or we're going to discuss about how to create CV, statement of purpose, or cover letter and abstract. And the videos given here is basically a short video guidelines for you to work on your CV, statement of purpose, and abstract. But the most important one, the results of this week's or today's lecture, is for you to have a CV and abstract ready for next week. Okay, so what I want you to do in this week is that you submit your CV and abstract to this following folder. If you click on this folder in EduNext, it will go to the abstract folder in Google Drive, where you need to send your CV and abstract. The objective of this is basically to get the order of your next week presentation. Okay, so what I usually do with my students in scientific communication class is I'm trying to recreate the settings of a seminar or a annual meeting or a scientific gathering, where the presenter is basically structured. Okay, the presenter is basically scheduled into a certain hour, and the order, okay, the order of their presentations is based on the registration. Okay, so if you are, for example, if you are, okay, this is also, I want to show you about the joint convention of Hagi, Yagi, IAFMI, and IATMI, where it's going to be held next week virtually. Okay, so it's basically an online seminar or online joint convention held by these four respectable institution or respectable organization. So whenever you register for this kind of meeting, and then you register for and then you are basically participating as a presenter. Okay, so if you are registered now, for example, and then you are trying to trying to send yourself as a presenter, then they will ask you to give you your bio, okay, and then they will and then the order, okay, the order for your presentations is basically based on the day when you are registering. Okay, so it is normal if you are sending any committee, any person who are responsible to a certain meeting, the order of presenters usually is controlled or scheduled by the order of their registration or their submission files. Okay, so if one participant or one presenter is submitting later than the other, then that presenter will be talked after those who are already registered, basically. So since we are recreating those occasion, the order of your presentation that will begin on next Tuesday will be determined by the order of your submission abstract. Okay, so if you submit your abstracts soon, then you will be the first presenter of our class. Okay, so for example, here I'm taking this example from last semester. The first presenter, Alice Agustiana, is basically the one who sent me the first abstract from the rest of the students. Okay, and then followed by Edgar Raffi Manzo, Christopher Jaya, Martin Adrian, and so on. And therefore, the one who are going to present last is basically is the one who gave me the abstract in the last moment. Okay, so so close to the deadline. Okay, or even those who are late in submitting their abstract are basically those who are presenting on the last day of the scientific communication presentation sessions. Okay, so from this illustration, do you have any questions regarding the assignment? Okay, in terms of the materials for the lecture today, you can, let me see, I think, is there any, let me see, is there any, oh, okay, so I think I haven't submit this into the EduNext. Okay, so I'm going to, this is the lecture notes. Okay, lecture slide week 12. Yeah, no, this is week 13. Yeah. Week 13 and the, okay, so here is the lecture material that you can follow through this class. Sure, yes. Okay, which basically tells us how to create a curriculum vitae and statement of purpose, which is required for you to apply, is required for you to submit into a certain recruiter or into a certain office in graduate study. Okay, so if you're planning to continue your study abroad or even here in ITB or in Indonesia, what they usually ask you to do is to write some kind of a statement of purpose or a cover letter that tells you that I am a graduate of this university. I want to apply for the graduate study position in your university because this, and that. So it's basically telling you about a short, so it's basically telling you about a short story of your objective and your aims or your goals of entering that position or entering graduate studies. So So basically, curriculum vitae and also statement of purpose or cover letter is basically a short passage about yourself. And sometimes you need to make an effort to tell yourself, especially when you're going to apply for a job and applying for a graduate study, or basically you want to offer, or basically you want to tell someone, or is basically you, or sometimes it is required for a keynote speaker of a certain seminar uh, to send a short CV so that the viewers and also the listener or the attendees of that annual meeting would knew what is the background of that particular keynote speaker. Okay, so but for obvious reason, curriculum vitae and also cover letter or statement of purpose usually used for applying for a certain position, whether it's for a job or graduate study. There are three components that help you in getting the position that you want. First is your life story, and then your dreams, and then the how others perceive you. And the first two of the above lists is in your control. So another thing that also required in some graduate studies, and also in a certain field of job, for example, they ask you to send them the letter of recommendation from your former advisor, for example, or from person who knows you about your activities or about your past work, etc. and so on. So these three are basically the thing that recruiters or people in the graduate office ask you to send them because it basically tells you about your past work, about your achievement, about your work ethics, etc. and so on. And as it is told here in the slide, that the first two, which is the curriculum vitae and statement of purpose, is basically the one that you wrote by yourself. Whereas letter of recommendation usually is written by people who knows about you or a former employer of yourself. Okay, so it is not on our control because the relation is basically the relation is basically comes from your advisor or from your past employers or the one who is going to give you the recommendation with the company itself. But the one that is for you, okay, you only have control for curriculum vitae and also the statement of purpose. So the traditional format, okay, the traditional template for curriculum vitae, which is pretty common in the American or North American university, is just like this one. Okay, so it tells, so it's basically consists of your names, your affiliation, your education history, your work history, publications, selected invited talks, and presentation. This is true, and this is basically a beneficial curriculum vitae, especially for those who are looking for a position in academics or in research. Okay, so because it is tells the recruiter or tells the graduate office about publications and selected invited talks. Whereas for applying for a certain company, for example, an energy company or an art company or an entertainment company, etc., and so on, the format will be different. Okay, the most common thing about those CV is basically the names and also the affiliation or your address. Okay, your current address of yourself. Your past education and also your past work history. However, the main differences between one curriculum vitae to another is that the follow-up story or the follow-up section would be different in terms of the position that you are looking for. So if you're aiming for a certain entertainment company, obviously you're not going to show them about your publication, about your invited talks, etc., and so on, right? So it's basically if you're going to applying for that position, probably you will list about the organizational experience that you have, for example, in Himafi or in ITB or etc. and so on, whereas you are responsible in terms of dealing with some kind of event, or you are basically in charge of a certain task or job in handling that event, for example. And then if you're applying for example, if you are applying for Pertamina, for example, you will not listing on your CV about your organizational experience that is not related to work. Obviously, if it's not, if you have experience, for example, in holding some kind of a charity activities, probably will not beneficial for you if you are going to but probably it's not going to be beneficial if you mention it in your CV if you're going to apply for Pertamina, for example. But however, some companies do respect it, because some companies do have some kind of a CSR or company responsibility program that may ask people who have experience in charity work to work for them, for example. That sometimes it becomes beneficial. But if you're going to apply for the technical position, for example, as a field engineer or for some kind of data analyst or something like that, probably mentioning about your charity work is not that beneficial. But except if you are applying for administration position in Pertamina or some kind of office work and something similar with that, probably mentioning about the past charity work will be beneficial. But it is not for the technical one. And then if you are applying for a graduate study, probably if it is not that useful, for example, to mention about your past experience in holding some kind of an exhibition, etc., and so on. So make sure that your position and the content of your curriculum vitae is already matched. Okay, so it basically tells the recruiters or tells the prospect employer about the quality, about the things that you have knowledge about on that is basically required or basically needed by the company itself. Okay, CV is a curriculum vitae, which means life story. It's a concise summary of a person's education and professional experience. Sometimes it is called also as resume or biographical sketch, so that, or sometimes it is called as biodata, or which typically includes your education history, employment history, honor and award, affiliations, publication, service to profession, and other information if required. CV for research proposal is also needed in order to see whether the person who is responsible or the person of interest who the principal investigator of that proposal is knowledgeable with the topic. So the purpose of including a CV in a research proposal or a grad school application is to convince people that you have the requisite education, skills, and experience to be successful. So these are basically the purpose of why on some activities or some research grant, they also ask you to send your CV. Okay, carefully follow all instructions about CV, includes all required information. adhere to page limits and formatting requirement, and then do not include personal information that is unrelated to your ability to do research proposal. So this is this one is taken from an example of a CV aimed for a research position. So if you are, so here, since we are talking about CV for research proposal, it is not okay, or it is not advisable for you to include your marital status, your age or date of birth, your dependent, and also your health. Okay, because sometimes some companies require you to mention about this, but obviously for a research position, this one is not included. Okay, because they focus, okay, because the one that will give you the fund for research and for those who are evaluating the proposal of your research activity, it is it's not going to be determined by your marital status, whether you are single or not, or whether you are 20 years old or 40 years old, or you have 4 children, 2 children, or doesn't have any children at all, or whether you have some kind of health issues, for example, cancer, or you have some disability, etc., and so on. Because those people who works on research grant usually will see the candidates, the suitable candidate, based on the applicability of the science itself, or whether the science will basically help the development of scientific progress itself. Okay, so basically telling these personal information is unrequired for those people. But remember, for some companies, they will ask you about it, because they will consider whether you are suitable to work in a remote location or not, etc., and so on. Okay, so your name goes on the first line, which is typical for any curriculum vitae. Center your name and affiliation, and then provide complete contact information. And you must provide them, because if you are getting the position, the recruiter will contact you from your cell phone or from your email. Okay, so make sure that the address, whether it's your letter address, home address, or office address, or your telephone number and email is already updated. Okay, so that whenever the recruiters want to contact you, and then you got the position, you will not miss the opportunity. Because if you are missed that, then they will contact another person who is also have the same capabilities with you. Okay, so here is an example of the first. So this is basically what is given here. Celia Matthew Elliott. It is the first section of the CV that is shown here. And this is mine. This is myself. Okay. Before the modification of our institution, we still use the Department of Physics, but nowadays we basically use our faculty instead, or mention about, or we use the research division where we conducting our research, for example. Okay, and then after we state our name and affiliation or address, we list our education and work experience on the next sections. Okay, here is the title section, education, and then each entry must include the institution name and location, the degree we earn, and then the year we received the degree and our major field of study. So for example, in this one, okay, Celia Matthew Elliott is graduating from Michigan State University in 1971. She got a degree in she got a degree of Bachelor of Arts, majoring English American history. And then in 1974, she got a master in education, where major is educational psychology from University of Illinois. And then okay, so the next section is basically the work history of her, which start from Swift and Company, acting as customer service, and then sales representative, and then assistant plant manager, and then general manager. And then she moves on to Prairie State Meats, and then move on to Parkland, then move on to Department of Nuclear Engineering and University of Illinois as an assistant editor, and then move on to Department of Physics, University of Illinois, but not as the but not acting as a lecturer, but acting as a director, external affairs and special projects. So here is an example of people who are professional in their work, where some position in a technical and science university sometimes it's not coming from physics major, or it's not coming from its own particular major, because some administration affairs is properly handled by those who are experienced in administration, for example. So even though some people is not educated in science or in physics. So for example, if you're taking our own study program, as a organization, we need people who also deals with finance, with human resource, with ICT knowledge, etc. and so on. And therefore, it is common, especially for the institution, for those institutions in abroad, okay, not in Indonesia, that they have qualification not related to the major of that study program, for example, because each study program or each department or each faculty also deals with administrative problem, and especially when it's working on the external affairs or special project, they need people who knows about the finance law and also the administration of certain affairs or certain work. Okay, employment. Okay, so these are one example of employment. And what about part-time job unrelated to physics? Okay, you can include them if you can, but if it's not that relatable, then you may omit them instead. Okay. List honors and award and professional association. Next, honor and rewards, professional association. If you are a member of HAGI, or if you are a member of PSI, Physical Society of Indonesia, then you may list the Physics Society of Indonesia, which basically an organization, which basically a professional organization for physicists in Indonesia. You may mention in your CV, telling them that you are an active member of that organization, and also you are participating in any event that they held, for example. Okay, so for those of you who are interested in teaching, you may list also your teaching experience, whether it's an experience in kindergarten teaching, or in elementary school teaching, or in a informal teaching. Okay, because sometimes when you are working in a KKN, okay, or you are working on a certain NGO, for example, or you are basically volunteering for a certain charitable work, and you are teaching some children about science, math, or Bahasa Indonesia or English, it may add to your experience in teaching, because the teaching ability itself is not everybody have the the ability to conduct it to conduct it in a good way. So if you have the experience for teaching, even though it's pretty informal, or even though the audience itself is not that formal, okay, you still have the opportunity to show that in your CV. Okay, research interest and significant contribution is also research interest. So research interest, sometimes it is required in the CV, but most of the time it is normally written in the cover letter or in statement of purpose, because there you could mention about your interest, and then what is your expectation on working on that particular research interest, for example. So this is an example for the previous from the previous example. And then list of your publication, especially if you're going to apply for research position or teaching position in the university, or something similar, or if you are going to even for if you are going to apply for a research position in oil company or in mining company, this list of publication will also required. Or if it's not required, then you must mention it, because it will show you about your ability and your experience and professionalism about conducting research. Okay. List of presentations. Usually this one is usually this one is required for those of sometimes it is required for a keynote speaker to show them about their expertise in or their experience in talking in public or talking in a certain scientific seminar, etc., and so on. And then, okay, sometimes we mention about classes, okay? So for example, if you are taking a scientific communications class in this semester, for example, are you going to tell them? Are you going to mention about it in your CV? Well, sometimes if the recruiter is asked you to list all of your past course that is related to the work position, then you may mention it in your CV. But if it's not, then it is not required for you to mention about it. But if you feel that this class is basically beneficial for you when you're applying for a certain position, you may tell about it during your interview instead. Okay, because telling about this in your CV is basically going to span the space of your CV is basically, and so it's not that advisable for you to do that. Okay, use your CV to supplement the proposal or cover letter, and then select information to emphasize relevant experience and prior success. Okay, so if you're going to working on a certain charitable organization, then you don't need to tell them about your past activities in selling some products, because it's basically profit making activities. Okay, do not include do not include purely personal information. Okay, so in nowadays, if you are not careful with mentioning about, because in the past, okay, I think there are many examples or templates that people use in the past that they show their ID number, for example, or their telephone number. Or a personal telephone number in their CV. Nowadays, it is kind of dangerous to put them in your CV, because sometimes the recruitment office, when they're kind of negligent with their work, the CV is going to be thrown from their office, and there are chance to be stolen or taken by some people who are not responsible, responsible. Okay, so be careful when you are going to mention about your personal information on your CV, because nowadays there's some kind of the potential of having an identity theft, etc., and so on, is pretty high in today's era. But in the past, it is true that if you have chance to look for old books or old format of people's curriculum vitae, sometimes they mentioning about their marital status, how many children they have, what is the ID card number, what is the telephone number, etc., and so on. If you're doing that in today's settings, it will be dangerous for you. Okay, writing statement of purpose. Okay, your objective in so the one that we already talked earlier is mostly about how you write your CV. Now we are continuing with statement of purpose, which sometimes it is called as cover letter. Your objective in writing a statement of purpose is to convince an admission committee that a certain fund that they're going to invest to you is going to be well spent. Okay, or this is true especially for those who have a scholarship for graduate studies. You have to make sure that the grant office, that the money that they gave you is going to be well spent, and you're going to be the best graduate students they're going to have. Okay, or if you're going to apply for a certain position in the office, the cover letter or statement of purpose is going to tell the recruitment office that if you are recruiting yourself, if they are recruiting you, you will be the best employee, the best employee of the company, and it will be a beneficial thing for the company if you get hired by them. Okay, because it's basically you have the confidence to have the requisite skills, experience, and desire to success. You are excited about the research, or you have the discipline to persist when the activities is going to get tough. So basically, the statement of purpose is basically telling the recruiters that you have that qualities that they look for the position, basically. Okay, statement of purpose is an SOP, or statement of purpose, to emphasize your research goal. So it's basically so this slide is kind of deviate into a research position, more onto research position, but it can be applicable for any position that you desire. And the committee based their decision on their assessment of your intellectual horsepower, for example, GPI and the GRE score, and research literacy. Sometimes one institution will require you to mention about your GPA and GRE score, but sometimes it doesn't matter. Clearly state your short and long-term career goals, and then one size that does not fit at all. It means that your cover letters need to be modified from one company to another. Okay, so if you are going to apply for one company or one graduate study, please don't use the same thing. Okay, please don't use the same cover letter for each position that you pursue from one company to another. Please modify them and adjust them so that it will be matched with the thing that they ask you to do. Okay, so I guess the rest of the materials here is basically self-explanatory. You can browse it and then you can read it carefully by yourself. And even the videos that I provide in the EduNext is also a beneficial thing for you to understand about how to create CV, cover letter, statement of purpose, and also abstract. So in summary, a CV is a concise summary of a person's educational and professional experience, which typically includes educational history, employment history, honor and award, affiliation, publication, service to the profession, and other information if required. And express so that you can express yourself lucidly, elegantly, and concisely, because sometimes they only need you to send them a piece of paper that mentioning about that about your past experience. So this is one example from Pa Alex, because the slide because the lecture slide that I using here is basically a heritage slides from the previous scientific communication class used by Alex and Danu Kurnia. So the example given here is a CV of Alex, which you basically could modify for your own purpose. Because I think, if I'm not mistaken, so let me show you examples of CV and cover letter that students sent me in the last semester. Let me see. Assessment sheet, or is it in minor assessment? Okay, minor. Is it in minor assignment? No, I think it was in the 15-minute presentation abstract. Is it an abstract? Okay, this is presented assessment. I kind of forgot where or is it in, or is it still on the here in the Google Drive? Okay, this one, classroom, 2020 semester. Okay, this one. Okay, this one. Here it is. Okay, so obviously the format that most of the students nowadays use is not that traditional one that I've shown you earlier of Pa Alex and also what's her name? Celia Matthew Elliott. So this is basically the most conservative template, or the most conservative format of one's curriculum vitae that you can see here, which basically it is more usable for those who are deals with academia or in research position. For example, here the format of Pa Alex CV is pretty conventional and conservative, which basically listed about the relevant and important information about himself in terms of research, past education, and selected publication, etc., and so on. Because this is a typical CV of a certain lecturer or a faculty member of one university, whereas the nowadays CV, as I mentioned earlier, if we look at the CV created by your senior, is more colorful. Yeah, obviously it's more colorful, and then the format itself, it's more like a business or people who are professionals in terms of in the finance sector. Okay, so this format, okay, this format or this type of CV that is mentioned here is probably the newest template or the newest suggestion that many recruiters have for people, for students in terms of writing their CV. So it is okay for you to have this type of CV later on in order to get your, I'm just going to remind everybody about the assignment is that you submit your CV and abstract, okay, CV and abstract of your presentation to this folder, so that we could place the order of student presentation for next Tuesday. Okay, so the first submitters, okay, the first student who is going to submit their abstract and CV into the corresponding folder will have the opportunity to become the first presenter on next Tuesday. And then the rest will be followed, but will be followed based on the submission time or submission day. And so back to the format itself, you can make it like this one, which is pretty common in nowadays job seeking, okay, which pretty common in today's career day or job seeking session, etc., and so on. Or you can make them conservative or typical in a research position like this one. Okay, so the template that you're going to use is going to be freely up to you, whether you're going to use a conservative template or a innovative and progressive template. Okay, but the submission itself will determine the order of your presentation for next week. Okay, so that's the taken message of today's class. Okay, so I think that is all for today's lecture. You could follow up the rest of the materials here for your own purpose, for your benefits later on, probably in the future. Probably in the long or near future, you will applying for a certain position in a certain company, or you're going to develop your own company, and then you're going to create some kind of a portfolio of your company, etc., and so on, so that the knowledge of creating a CV is basically the same when you are creating a portfolio, except that probably the sections will be a little bit different, etc., and so on. But the purpose itself is basically the same. It's basically the aims of creating a portfolio or curriculum vitae or statement purpose basically is to sell, quote unquote, yourself, to become so that people will notice you about your achievement, about your knowledge, etc., and so on. Okay, so with that, I'm just going to end my lecture on CV and statement of purpose and abstract. So the materials or the explanation on how to create an abstract is I think it's already given in the week when we are talking about how to create a scientific paper. Okay, how to write and publish a scientific paper. There are parts that talks about how to create an abstract. So you can use the direction there. I think it was in week 4 or week 5. Okay, scientific paper, how to. Okay, I think it is also mentioned here in the. Okay, title, body of introduction, and then how to create an abstract is also mentioned here, if I'm not mistaken. Or you can also access the video, the lecture, or the YouTube video that I mentioned here in video 5. It is basically tells you how to create your abstract from your paper or from your final presentation. Okay, so the one that you need to submit in this week is to submit your CV and also your abstract in order for you to get the schedule for your 15 minutes presentation. Okay, so that is all for today's meeting. And the additional, okay, so I have some kind of a promotional things to do in this last part of our class, is that in next week, November the 23rd until November the 25th, we're going to have, well, Hagi, Yagi, IAFMI, and IATMI is going to hold a joint convention, Bandung 2021, which is basically the joint annual meeting for this organization, and it's going to be online. Okay, it's going to be online. It's not going to be offline that they usually have in the past years. So if you register yourself as a students, okay, student S1, I think they will charge you free, if I'm not mistaken. So let me open my WhatsApp message from the president himself, well, president of Hagi. That tells us that the students, bachelor degree students who are interested in joining the conference will it's not going to be required to pay anything, because the meeting itself is going to be online. Okay. Okay, if you, okay, and then I'm aware that in our class there are students who are interested in earth physics or in geophysics, or something related to geoscience. So I'm encouraging you to apply for or registering for the meeting, because it will show you about the latest development of earth science in general, which includes geology, geophysics, petroleum science and engineering, and then machine learning, artificial intelligence in geoscience, etc., and so on. That you can follow, that you can study from the expert that is going to talk in the sessions. Okay, okay. Let me. Okay, let me. Or if my. Okay, just wait for a moment. I will turn on the WhatsApp. Okay, let me see. Okay, science and technology, pengurus pusat, and then okay. Let me see. Well, is it in pengurus pusat or is in the another group? Let me see. Okay, here, open registration. Okay, so the president of Hagi, Maharam Jaya Pagurisang, has informed the chairman of his the chairman of his organization to basically to promote the activities of joint convention, and the registration fee for Professional non-member is 950,000 rupiahs, and then for professional members and professional member undergraduate as well, master and doctorate degree student, technical judge and technical session chairman needs to pay for this one, and then 350,000 for technical presenter, and then free for those of you who are bachelor degree students. Okay, so for those of you who are interested in the development of earth science, geoscience, petroleum science and engineering, geological science and engineering, the implementation of machine learning, artificial intelligence in geoscience, please register yourself for participating in the GCP 2021. And the at this moment I haven't got the list of titles that this invite. So they're going to have some kind of invited sessions from these keynote speakers, but they also have parallel sessions that talks about specific topics that relates to geoscience. One of them is exploration, and then mining, geothermal, artificial intelligence, the application of artificial intelligence. They mentioned as big data in geoscience, and many other topics that relate to geoscience. So if you are interested in joining these occasions, is a big opportunity for you to know about the development of geoscience. Okay, so I think that's all for today's class. Thank you for participating. In Thursday, I'm going to look and examine your draft for your 15-minute presentation. And don't forget to submit your CV and abstract to the given folder in order for you to get your schedule for the final presentation. Okay, let me stop the recording, and then after that